Kia ora and welcome to another episode of the Power Podcast. Today with me is Holly Bailey. Holly is from Australia. She is the founder of Play Like a Girl, which is an organisation that empowers women and girls across Australia through sport and leadership development. She's passionate about promoting gender equity in sport and is a former VFLW player and competitive netballer. Holly, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here with us on the show. Thank you so much for joining us from across the Tasman.
Thanks, Jess. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
I know that we've had a few chats and there's a lot of overlap, a lot of passions that we share in common and a lot of great work that we're both involved in. And so I'm almost tempted to go, this session could last for an hour, right? If once we get started, there's so much to talk about. For those listening, it probably won't, because I don't think any of us have got an hour these days to listen to podcasts, but there's so much we could start with. And I reckon probably for those that don't know you, it would be awesome to hear a little bit more about your journey and Play Like a Girl. So you've obviously founded Play Like a Girl. There was a journey before that got you to that point where you thought that was a good idea. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. And you're so right. We could talk for an hour, if not a lot more. So I'll try and keep it as condensed as possible today for the listeners. So I did found Play Like a Girl almost probably 8 years ago now. However, it looks very different now than what it first looked like when I first started it. But I guess prior to starting it or having an idea of this being something that I wanted to do, I grew up in a competitive family. I was raised predominantly by my dad and my brother, so a bit of a boys' world. I'd be following my brother to the footy or to my dad to the cricket, and we'd always be immersed in sport in one way or another. Either at home, we'd have a ball in hand, or we'd be going and watching something on the weekends. So sport was just a part of our family and what we did. We were very outdoorsy. We would go camping all of the time, and so just being out in nature and throwing your body around and doing things like that was kind of the norm. And so I learned from my family early on that getting out and being competitive and doing what the boys do is the norm. So I never really thought otherwise. I just learned that you get out there, and what leadership meant, I guess, in my family as I reflect, was it means winning at all costs. It means get out there and perform as with everything that you have and give it absolutely everything and take no prisoners. Now, that is okay. That works to a degree. However, from a leadership perspective, there was a whole lot for me to learn and unlearn at the same time. So being competitive and getting out there and wanting to do my best is certainly something that I love and embrace. And I'm really glad that I learned that through my family structure. However, when I got a little bit older and started being in leadership roles, I had to keep learning the hard way that that's not going to get the best out of my team and the people around me. So that did end up being a part of why I wanted to start Play Like a Girl. But I guess the really initial seed that really unlocked something for me was around some self-imposed limitations that I had identified or that I felt the heartbreak of. I was thinking about this morning, actually, the feeling of when you achieve something that perhaps you didn't think was possible, and that kind of elation of going, oh my goodness, I didn't think that was possible, and look what I've done. What else is possible? Versus, oh my gosh, I had more to give. I wish that I didn't get in my own way. And that feeling of almost regret or, that feeling is what unlocked a seed for me, I guess. And it was through playing netball, and I thought that I wasn't good enough to get to a certain grade. And then many years later, I had the opportunity to go and do that and play at that grade. And when I played, I had a really good game. And the coach came up to me afterwards and said, "Oh, where have you been? You should certainly be playing here." And I just said, "Oh, no, I don't know about that in one way or another." And he just said, "Well, I just put a girl in the level above this one who plays a very similar game to you. So you might want to rethink that." And I felt like my whole world just came crashing down around me, because I thought, it's my thinking, it is my limitations, it's my perception of what's possible that has got me in this position. And that just, I felt, was really devastating in the moment. And I know there's bigger things than sport out there, but I'm an all-in kind of gal, and I'd learned to work hard and go in all in what you do. So to feel that limitation that I had presented myself was very upsetting. And I remember standing there like a wave had crashed over me, and I just thought, I don't want this for me, and I do not want this for any other person that I play with or that I'm involved with or any other woman and girl. So that kind of just was a moment of going, well, if that's not true, what else isn't true? And it kind of opened up this real desire to explore the way that I thought about myself and the world and what I perceived to be true or not true. And I guess the sort of following weeks and years from that was my realization that I was still thinking and perceiving the world in the same way that my family and my dad and my brother do. Like I just saw it that way, and I'd never really evaluated if that's still how I wanted to be in the world and how I perceived leadership, or I perceived what to be possible for myself. So I really wanted to understand myself better, and on that journey started learning all of this amazing material, and that there were programs out there, and that there was all of this stuff that was just so far outside of my awareness. And as I started to learn it, I thought, man, I want to be having these conversations with more people, and especially with women in sport, because I'd never had a conversation around mindset and how that really impacts performance and well-being and a whole range of other things. And I didn't really know what it meant. I had the title of a leader, but I had no idea what that actually meant in terms of getting performance out of my team or inspiring, enabling others into action. So a few of those things became the seeds and the evolution of what is now a national leadership, a national community leadership program for women and girls across every sporting code, that I want them to have a similar unfolding or an unraveling of how they see themselves and perceive, what they perceive to be possible for them in the world. So that in a nutshell, I guess, is sort
Yeah.
of how it became, how I started it.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. And I love what you were talking about there with the kind of the stories that we tell ourselves and the perceived limitations that we then therefore put on ourselves as to what we're capable of, or what we should be doing. And I think there's a unique, as women, we're really good at that. But there's also a unique struggle that sometimes we have, and I'm sure you witnessed this with the girls in Play Like a Girl, that often it's not just our internal world and our own inner thoughts that are putting limitations on us, but there's an external narrative around that space as well, particularly around, and you'll have come across this when you play traditionally what used to be thought of as boys sports. Because I know for me, growing up, I grew up in the UK, and my love and my sport was football, was soccer. And was back then constantly being told, well, girls don't really play that. There wasn't a school team that I could play on because of my gender. And I think for a lot of women and girls, and this happens in the leadership space as well, if you're in a male dominated environment, which of course sports still is, there's sometimes the external narrative as well that's like, well, you don't really belong here, or you look and sound different to everybody else that is here, and will you still perform as well as a leader when you are different? And so I think it's almost a double whammy then, that's very specific for women, particularly in industries like sport, that you've got to battle your own internal narrative as well as sometimes the external narrative. So yeah, keen on your thoughts about that, because I'm sure that's something that's cropped up a lot.
Definitely, and definitely. And I think it was the self-imposed one I felt first. So I had a really vivid experience of what I was creating for myself. And then it was through that kind of journey and exploration that I started realizing, hang on a second, it's not only my own stuff. There is a whole challenge out there that women and girls face externally as well, like you just shared. And the way that showed up for me was particularly when I would talk about sport, or I'd be at a football club and I might be talking about netball or whatever it might be. Like I just put everything into it. So it's so important to me. But so what I would just notice when I would talk about it was almost as if it felt like some people that I would speak to didn't take it very seriously, or thought it was a bit of a joke, or like that my sport's not important as important as the boys' sport or the football results or anything like that. And that started to wear me down. And that wore thin pretty quickly once I'd started to find some personal empowerment, I suppose. And I'd start noticing where the girls weren't acknowledged in the same ways as the boys were. This is in a football netball club I'm referring to as I think about this. I just didn't think that was right. And, the girls are expected to train the same time, and the expectations around performance are very much the same, but the credibility and value of the sport doesn't equate. And that I just thought was wildly unfair. And so probably the external stuff I didn't start realizing till later, which is why when I first started Play Like a Girl, that the way that I heard that and the way that I wanted to live that phrase was, yes, I do, watch me. Like, there was such a seed of rebellion in it.
Mm.
I really think that when when you're underestimated or perceived not to be as good as somebody else, or that's how you perceive it, that ignites something that is almost unstoppable, and great things are created off the back of it. And yeah, that sort of reminds me in this scenario where I think women's sport has felt that for a really long time, and now it's like that rubber band, you pull it back and we're coming in hot because we've had enough now. We think it's time for us to all be on an equal playing field.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And with that, there's a massive opportunity at the moment, particularly for women in sport. And I almost, being in the kind of gender balance space and working in equity for some years, I've almost seen sport as one of the last bastions. There's been lots of progress in this space, and all of a sudden the spotlight is on the sporting industry. And we have seen such a shift, particularly over the last 5 years, even, and that will continue to shift. And therefore, I feel like there's this massive opportunity for women's sports and for women in sport. And I know that we were at a conference earlier in the year together, and on the Gold Coast, and one of the stats quoted was that the return on investment is something like $7 for every dollar for women's sport, and that's massive in terms of the dollar opportunity that we know every business will see, because we love dollar opportunities when we're in business. So how do women make the most of that? Because I feel like we're on this precipice of things changing. And yet we also know that the environment and the systems that we operate in are still in the process of catching up. And we also know there's challenge and struggle for those women involved in sport. So what's your thoughts in terms of how we overcome some of those challenges and make the most of this opportunity that presents?
I think that we still need to meet organisations that are willing to invest in sport where they are. So we know the potential of women's sport. We're immersed in it. We love it. We know what's on the horizon. However, I think that there's some great examples of how it's being done well, and the progress that we've seen has been amazing. I often am hearing stories through our members about how hard it really is for them, and how they're not seeing the progress. And I think that that's still absolutely happening across the board in so many different codes. So when I think about investment in women's sport, I think it just needs to be completely rethought, and it can be up to us to educate them on what that should actually look like to advance women in sport. Because I wrote an article about this morning, where thinking about in sport, right? You know how one of the biggest pieces of frustrations of our members that they've communicated with us is that often the male sporting structure is replicated for the girls, and then they figure out, oh, that might not work for the girls. We've got a different, let's call it customer, we've got a different audience that we're trying to engage. So what we do for them is going to need to be different. I think that same thing applies in a sponsorship perspective, where what we're looking at is going, well, let's sponsor the women's program or the women's team, and let's do it in exactly the way we've done with the blokes. Let's put logos on the shorts, let's put signage, let's put, brand everywhere. Where if we look at the product, the women's might not be getting the same visibility. So the return on logos and visibility is different. What actually advances women in sport is investing in pathway programs, investing in coaches and resources and things that advance the product, so that long term, then you get the return where we've got the eyes and we've got the product that's a really great one for everyone to watch. And I just think it's such a long game. So people that want to invest and really advance it need to be on board and in for this next 10 years in this green and gold era, where we know in 10 years time what we're going to be talking about is very, very different. The products and services and what's going to be available in the industry of women's sport, we don't even know yet. Half the jobs don't even exist. It's really exciting, but I think that it's exciting for us because we know it and we see the potential, but there are still so many that don't understand what it's really going to take, and I think we can really help to educate what that could look like.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. And with that opportunity, I think sport is such a unique industry because when I think of like career trajectory, particularly for players, there are not many industries out there where you're contemplating retirement once you hit 30, right? And yet it also sets you up in such a unique way because I'll talk to ex-players who are almost at the feel like they're at the start of their career because they're having to retrain, they're having to go into something different, and they almost feel like a junior. And yet there's such a unique transferable skill set that you get from being part of the sporting world, from being on a team, particularly if you've then captained that team and all the leadership experience that comes with that. And so there's so much transferable skills that women take with them when they leave their playing career. I feel like there also should naturally be more women in the leadership space, particularly in sport. And I'd love to know what you've observed. Obviously you've been on your own journey in this space and will observe many others, because I feel like that's currently a missed opportunity as well for women.
I can't even decide where to start on this topic. This is something that I'm so wildly fiery and passionate and excited about at the moment. I couldn't agree with you more. I won't share names, but I literally just got off the phone to someone that I've known for a period of time who has put into a leadership role in her football club really early. She was a young leader, lots of pressure in that role and lots of learning experiences early on. And she was sharing with me how that's translating for her at work. So she's new in her career and is now willing and able and excited about being able to provide peer-to-peer feedback to leaders and to people in her organization. And they're looking at her going, this is unique. She's coming out of university and going into a working environment and has the confidence and willingness to really be aware of team dynamics and team performance and to be able to open up and share. And the way that she was talking was just so very wise. And I could tell it's because she's already had to deal with some real challenges and some difficult conversations and some scenarios that you might not otherwise deal with because of sport. And I was sitting there thinking, this is why I love sport. This is why we are so lucky to be immersed in sport growing up, because we're shaped in one way or another by the experiences that we have in sport. And if we can apply them directly into our leadership, like this example, that is so, so powerful. So I couldn't agree more. And I think about this a lot, to be honest. We focus on transferable skills in our program, but what we do at Play Like a Girl Australia, we don't know how to win gold medals. I don't have that formula. If I did, we'd be having a different conversation, Jess. What we're talking about is what we get to learn through the lens of sport. So when we talk about women in sport, or we talk about sport or great leaders before us, what are the lessons we can draw out from those things? And sport's an exciting and engaging topic, full of stories and ups and downs. So we like to use the vehicle of sport as the way to teach leadership skills. And I think about, if I put myself in this scenario, I'm a mid-quarter, I'm a midfielder. The way that I think about driving a business, it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of focus and a lot of get up and go. And I think about that's how I played sport as well. And that, for me, just time and time again directly translates from the way that I would play footy into the way that I'm trying to run a business. And whenever things get shared with me, I think about, oh yeah, I see how that plays out in sport, and here's how it plays out in a career sense as well. And that connection is just so strong and prevalent. I could talk about this forever. We ran a great campaign, might have been 2 years ago now, for International Women's Day, where we went and asked a whole lot of different senior executive women in a corporate setting who had a background in sport, how that's applied, how those skills have applied for them as leaders. And it's not necessarily the most groundbreaking concept. Like, it's fairly logical, but when we sit down for a moment and reflect and identify how it's shaped us and how it's setting us up as leaders, that's really powerful. To go, this is how this has happened. And then we get to go, all right, well, let's draw some of those things out and go back and teach it so that we've got all of these leaders coming through. I just think sport is just the best place to develop leaders, and it's just such a missed opportunity so far until now. You and I are going, hey guys, we really need to look at this space. We've got a massive shortage of female leaders. However, we've got millions of girls playing sport. Let's utilize that vehicle, shall we?
Yeah. Oh, so true, so true. And I think one of the things that constantly comes to my mind as well is this ability to perform under pressure, because that's pretty much, all sport all day, every day. And yet, in a leadership sense, maybe, it feels like it probably more often these days than not, but heading into crises and kind of, remaining calm amid the chaos becomes such an important skill set. And I know that we were chatting just before we went live about around energy. And I think that's one of the things that, not only for people like us that do this work, but also for women that are navigating quite male dominated industries or maybe places where they don't feel like they fit in or there's a disadvantage, then energy is something we need bucket loads of. And yet, energy is something that so often we compromise because of our need to compete, to achieve, to get shit done, to just be the best person we can be, to help everybody else around us. And so for me, my energy has always been the way I see it. It is my business. People don't necessarily engage with me because of what I know, because there's a million other people that know what I know. It's who I am. It's how I show up. It's that energetic feeling. And I know that you were saying similar this morning. Um, how do we keep, regardless of all the challenges that are going on around us, how do we keep our energy shining in a way that attracts others and helps put us across in our best light? Because this is something you have to do every day as well, right?
Yeah, and it's not easy. That's a really conscious, intentional choice to make. I think what I'm always astonished about every time we're running programs is we'll come in and we'll do a round of introductions of who's in the room and why they've come to be part of the program. And the amount of hats that people wear is outrageous. Like, I'm not saying I'm not one of them, but I'm just blown away by how much we try and fit into this one life and how many hats we're wearing: mums, aunties, parents of animals, husbands, wives, coaches, trying to play sport ourselves. There are so many different things that are people trying to that people are trying to navigate. So I think first and foremost to acknowledge it isn't necessarily something that's just going to happen. It needs to be carving out moments in between the things that we've committed ourselves to and really prioritize that. Because I think from a leadership perspective, like you said, the ability to handle yourself under pressure doesn't just happen itself. It means that I think about it like sport. It's the preparation that we do that enables us to be the best at whatever we're performing in. So whether that's leadership and needing to make good decisions fast, that comes because we've had a decent sleep, we're fueled, we've eaten okay. It's not necessarily the moment that you learn it, it's the preparation that you've done to be able to do it in the moment that counts. So I
Yeah.
think that really thinking about how we're preparing for life matters, and that's going to enable our leadership. That energy piece is so important. Like you alluded to, leadership, the more that we take on or the more responsibility that we have as leaders, the more difficult situations and challenges you have to deal with, and probably more often. So our ability to do that and remain focused on the things that are most important really matter requires us to be in a good headspace. And I think that's how we become the best leaders that we can. So intentional around, what do I really need here, and can I get it a little bit here and there, or what is a structure or a system that works for me to be able to do that. I find if I'm journaling and I'm going for a walk in the morning, that journaling piece for me is massive. If I didn't do that, I think I'd be a absolute madwoman, Jess, because it's a great place to just get everything out and then reset. And I will do that every day because, like I said, we're all so busy. There's no doubt about it. But making sure that we're constantly prioritizing the things that we believe to be the most valuable and important will lead to better outcomes. And that doesn't just happen on its own.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something often women struggle with. I think prioritizing ourselves, our own energy, the things that we need. And when we start to view it through that lens of this is for other people, this is so I can be a great leader, this is so I can be a great parent, this is so I can perform at my peak, it changes the narrative as opposed to this is something I get to do for me because it's a nice to have. And I think that's massive. It's certainly been my learning as well. Holly, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you today. What are you up to at the moment? Where can people find out more about you and find out more about Play Like a Girl Australia?
Absolutely. So you can follow us across all socials, Play Like a Girl Australia. We are currently running our last Empowered to Lead program for the year, but we will set back up again in February. We have some online networking events, and we've got Katie Parker, who's an Olympic boxer, coming along in 2 weeks' time for it to share her story with us. So if you're interested in hearing that, she's an exceptional human. So there's always a lot going on in the Play Like a Girl community. So come and say hello if you love the conversation today.
Fabulous. Thank you. And we'll pop those links in the show notes as well so that people can find them. Holly, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you today. Keep up the great work. And thank you for being a part of the show.
Thank you for having me.